Okay. Good morning. Slides. There you go. Wait a second. There you go. Well, it's a real honor to be here, and thank you, Dimitris and Sophia, for putting on such a great event in such an amazing venue. I remember reading and learning about all of the history that's come out of this country, and to be able to present here in this kind of occasion is a real honor for me. So in the next half hour or so, I'm going to try to give a fairly comprehensive picture of kind of where things are going in the next 10, 20, 30 years in terms of this technology, because we're in a relatively scary time in the world, because every day you see all the news about technology and how technology is going to change our lives and destroy the world and all these things. So with all the dystopian sci-fi out there, we see a lot of Black Mirror thinking. And what I would like us to do is to start moving into more of a blue door, get into a more three-dimensional, getting out from behind the screen. Right now, when we talk about Black Mirror, we're really more talking about the screen. The monitors, the TVs, the phones, the things that we've been looking at for 10 hours a day on average. And we need to go beyond that, break the screen, and look into what we are as animals. I mean, we are, as humans, we've evolved in a 3D world, and we need to move into more of a 3D space in terms of how we express ourselves and how we learn and how we work and how we understand and how we connect with each other. We're at a real inflection point in kind of the history of humanity right now, because all of the technologies that's been in sci-fi movies are now actually becoming real. We have gene tech with CRISPR that allows us to be able to manipulate our genes. We have artificial intelligence that's in the news every day that is going to make our brains smarter or maybe replace us. We have discussions about clean energy and fusion where we're going to get unlimited free energy. And today the topic about XR and metaverse, really giving us a new realm for us to express ourselves. So I'm going to focus today mostly on AI and on XR and how the two will come together. The term metaverse, probably a lot of people know, comes from Neil Stephenson's book, Snow Crash. And it's generally seen as a dystopian topic, right? Because in all of the books, whether you're talking about Matrix or Ready Player One, Snow Crash, it's all about a shitty real world, and then people escape to this virtual world to try to have a better life or a better emotional support. That's really, there's no reason why that has to be, right? In fact, I was talking with Neil Stephenson, and I said, why can't there be a positive book about sci-fi? And he's like, well, it can't make a good story when there's no problem. So you got to create a problem, right? So it's artificially created that it's this dystopian connection with technology. You look at artificial intelligence, the same thing. Everything from 2001 to iRobot, and Terminator. It's all about how AI is going to come and destroy humanity. It doesn't have to be. So we see a lot of gloom and doom that's out there, and it becomes scary. But the good thing is, I think most of us here probably have gone through a few of these cycles. In the 1980s, I actually started using I bought the initial IBM PC with my paper route money and started programming. And in the early 90s, I actually got into XR. I was studying VR with Tom Furness, who was the godfather of VR. And in fact, around that time, I also was doing neural network programming, doing natural language processing, voice recognition systems in undergrad systems. And then in grad school, I also got into AI at MIT, doing symbolic-based AI. And then later on, genetic algorithm AI to do big data processing. And then in the 2000s, I worked with AI to do the first natural language search system in China using text message systems. So we would send messages and be able to get responses back, kind of like what ChatGPT does today, but about 20-something years ago. Now, over the last 8 years, I've been with HTC, and one of the I think pioneers in this space. Essentially, we've created almost all the major innovations in this space in the last 8 years. So I first want to kind of talk a little bit about a lot of the misunderstandings and myths out there. Right? Given that we're in Greece, I think using this type of picture you guys would appreciate. Now, one of the things that I hear a lot is, oh, AI is really hot. That means the metaverse is dead or XR is dead. It's not true. Right? In fact, if anything, AI's heat or AI's advances actually will increase the pace of development for XR because it solves some of the major problems. I'll go into that a little bit later. Some people will say, hey, AR is a lot better than VR or XR or whatever. No, it's actually, they're all part of the same spectrum, and I'll go through that a little bit as well. Some people will say, hey, Apple's going to come out, it's going to dominate, it's going to kill everybody. The reality is that even where Apple's most successful today is in their phone business. They only own about 20% of the market, and in the PC business, they own about 10% of the market. So they're a very successful company, but they're not going to dominate, especially with a $3,000 to $4,000 product. A lot of people will say, oh, hardware prices, that's the reason why XR hasn't taken off. No, actually it's not, because the average price of VR, XR devices today is not any higher than phones. In fact, it's cheaper than a lot of the middle to high-end phones. So the issue is not price. The issue is really about content. And that's what AI actually will help with. And some people will say, VR, AR, it makes you sick, it's not good for your health. It's actually not true, and I'll go through some data later to talk about that. Some people will say, hey, it's all about the consumer segment. You got to make VR successful in consumer before it becomes successful. The reality is that for almost all major technologies, businesses actually are the first places where adoption happens. And some people say, hey, metaverse is a fad. It's going to, it's never going to come. It's like 3D TV. Or some people will say, it's already here, and we're already making it. Neither of those are true. The metaverse is years away. But when it comes, it is something that is inevitable. Some people will actually conflate Web3 and Metaverse as two things that are together, and that you have to have decentralization for you to have the Metaverse. Actually, no. There will be parts of the Metaverse that will be decentralized. There will be parts that will be centralized, and there are reasons for both to happen. There's also a lot of arguments about whether AI can be sentient or is already sentient. I'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then also there's fears that, hey, AI is using all these data centers, it's going to consume all this energy. I don't really have to worry too much, but I can understand that, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then people say, hey, AI is going to take all our jobs. There will be other people that say AI is going to free us from all work. There's a little bit of truth in both of that. And then lastly, people will say, AGI is coming, and it's going to doom humanity. Or it's going to save the world because it's going to solve all our problems. So the reality is that there's a little bit of truth in a lot of what's said above, but none of it is complete. Okay, so to the first point, I think you guys recognize this gentleman, Mark Twain. He said, the reports of my death are greatly exaggerated. I think that's true not just for him, but also for the XR and the metaverse industry today. And in fact, we've had winters for XR before. In fact, for AI, we've had similar winters. So every technology goes through ups and downs. It's a normal cycle. And having gone through many of these cycles, I've gone through the internet cycle, the PC cycle, the mobile cycle, now the XR cycle. Ups and downs are normal, right? And it's expected. So first of all, let's figure out, have a common understanding, what is the metaverse? Because a lot of people get confused. I think it's been misused quite often over the last couple of years. So the easy thing, I think, is that it has to be something that people can remember, because if it's really long, which I've seen a lot of definitions that are like half a page long, nobody will remember it, nobody understands it. So the way that I think is easy to understand is that it's essentially the 3D version of the internet we've been building for the last 30, 40 years, powered by AI, and then mostly consumed through XR devices. This is longer term, after it matures. Right? In the near term, most of it actually will be consumed on your phones, on your PC, on your 2D screens. And I actually checked this with Neil Stephenson. We're partners with him, and I'm friends with him as well. And he said, that definition works for me. When I first talked about the metaverse, I just kind of made that shit up. It was before the internet. So this makes sense to me. So if it's good enough for him, I think it's good enough for me, at least. Now, if you look at why 3D, why did I say 3D is so important? Because if you look at technology over the last century, as technology advances, content advances. And what we see is that we get more and more dimensionality, more and more interactivity in the content that's created. Everything from text, then to 1D audio, to 2D video, to 2.5D gaming. And now with the ability to go into immersive environments, we have 3D and we have natural interfaces, right? So this is a natural progression. Just like when I started, we don't want to be behind a window looking at a world. We want to open that door and walk out and go into that 3D environment and have that immersive experience. And one of the important parts of a immersive experience is having the right interface. In the past, we've been using keyboards, mice, touchscreens, right? There are very unnatural ways for us to interface with the world. What we really want to do is to use our hands, use our feet, use our eyes, use our mouth, use the ways that we interact with the real world. That's what XR will provide for you, and that's what the future metaverse environments will be, because then anybody, any age can use this, and they don't have to be trained. This is where we started about 8 years ago. That's me on the bottom, using some of the prototype Vive devices. We were the first company to come out with 6 degrees of freedom devices that allow you to walk around the entire room, and that was the magic. I remember using, in 1991, I used the VPL devices that were about $400,000. Now you're getting to a few $100s. And the processing power of that $400,000 device is actually a fraction of what's in our standalone devices that are just a few $100s today. So you can see the progress of technology. We're getting to now everything that was in those devices, the tracking, the systems, the wires, everything, into a standalone device that fits on your head. In fact, that device you can take the battery pack off and create a glasses type mode. Now, let's look. I'm talking really fast. I'm sorry. I'm actually trying to get like an hour of content into 30 minutes. Screens are something that we're very used to. We have a lot of them in our lives, right? But if you look back 120 years ago, there was no screens in our lives. We didn't have any screens. It was actually 120-something years ago, the first screen came out, which was the big screen. Right? The Lumiere brothers came out with the silver screen. And we've been adding every few generations, every few tens of years, decades, different screen. And at that trajectory, you're thinking, oh, we're going to have 30, 40 screens in our lives soon. It's actually the opposite. What we're going to find is that more and more screens will start aggregating into a device that is in our pocket or a device that's on our head. Right? And we're going to get to a point where we get back to where we were, which is having no screens. We're going to have a chip or something in our head or in our body that allows us to communicate with the rest of the world and be able to see whatever we need to see when we want to see it, or hear it, or feel it. Now, you guys probably recognize this guy, Mark Andreessen. So he said something that I'm not sure I completely agree with, but I think I see his point, right? He said, VR is going to be 1,000 times bigger than AR. And you actually hear that the opposite today, is that AR is everything, VR was on your last generation. The reality is that most people's lives are not as good as your lives or my life, that we can go and travel around the world and see things. Most people are very fixed in where they are. So their real environment may not be the best thing. So having the ability to transfer themselves into anywhere, anytime, and be anyone is actually a real value to them and gives them a lot more flexibility. So that's his point. Now, he also said something else that I think is actually very interesting. He said, software is going to eat the world, and this was in 2011. Now, a few years after that, another gentleman, which you probably recognize, said something else, is AI is going to eat software. Andreessen's made billions from his software is going to eat the world concept by investing in the right companies. But I think AI right now is definitely showing that Jensen Huang is probably right longer term, is that AI is going to start creating software. It's already creating software. Right? Now, why is AI becoming so hot of a topic these days? Because it is starting to grow at not just an exponential pace. So this chart right here is actually a log graph. In an exponential graph and a log graph, you expect a straight line. What we're seeing here is that you see an exponential growth in complexity and in the amount of data being put into these systems on a log graph, which means you're having a stacked exponential growth in terms of performance and capability. And that's brought about because of the combination of higher performance devices, as well as more and more data out in the market for it to train on. Right? So in fact, we're getting to a point where we're getting to that level where the complexity level is about the same level as the human brain. We have about 80 billion neurons in our brain, and about something like 80 trillion or 100 trillion synapses. We're getting pretty much to that level for how many parameters are going into the large language models today, and it's actually still growing, right? So, and when that happens, emergent capabilities start to happen. So things that are capable today in these new large language models, which actually I think is not a great name for it because it's going multimodal, so it's going beyond language. Now, just to give you another way to think about this, remember when AI first came out, they said if somebody can beat a person in chess, in checkers, or in Go, that's AGI. That's like super intelligent. And in comparison, Go is quite complex. It's 110 to the 180th power compared to the number of atoms in the universe, which is like 10 to the 80th power. Okay, so very complex, and we're already doing that, right? Now, with GPT-3, you were getting to ability to create 100-word answers to just about anything. That complexity level is 10 to the 200-something power. Okay, that's pretty complex, right? And these things all happen. First, it took 30, 40 years to get from checkers to chess. From chess to Go, it took another 20 years. And from Go to 100 words, it took 2 years. Now, going from from Go, we're going to essentially the ability to create a 100-page book from a prompt. Right? That's 10 to the 72,000 power. Okay, these little lines on the bottom, I am showing them just for visual purpose, but normally they would just be flat lines. You couldn't see the lines because the most bottom one, the highest one on the bottom was 10 to the 300. This is 10 to the 72,000. And that happened in 2 years. Okay? So AI is a very hot topic, and there's so many vocabulary that's coming out, right? So many words that come out, and it's actually creating a lot of anxiety and stress because there's so much change, so much progress. Every day you see a new paper, a new development. I actually took some of the kind of key words, and I was thinking, like, how do I educate people? How do I organize this? And I said, well, you know what? I'm going to let AI do it. I'm going to send it into ChatGPT and see what it comes out with. And it took that and it organized it in a way that I thought makes a lot of sense. Given today's limited time, I would suggest maybe just take a picture of this, because knowing these words will help you have a good foundation in terms of understanding. And if I had more time, I would actually go through each one. And if you need, I can send this to you afterwards. So, but I think understanding some of these keywords, it will give you the basis to start to have conversations about this topic. So first, let me do a little experiment with you guys in the audience. So what do you see there? Just a lot of Lego blocks, right? But if you squint your eyes a little bit, can you squint your eyes a little bit? What do you see? Exactly. You see a picture, you see Van Gogh's picture. In fact, you see there's very little detail in this picture, but your brain fills in the gaps. Right? This is how diffusion models work in AI today. You give it a little spat of some shadow of something, and then it creates a picture for you. This is like the DALL-E or the Mid-Journey. Those kind of pictures come from this type of model. Okay? Now, let me give you another test. Try to read what's on that right side. It's just the garbled words, right? But as you read, the more you read, the faster it goes. Right? So all of you guys are able to take something that's essentially gibberish and turn it into readable words. Why? Because you're doing the same thing that large language models do, is that they look at the words and then they start predicting the next words, and then they start creating patterns, and they start understanding something that wasn't meant to be what it originally said. Right? And so just to show you, our brains actually work a lot like how a lot of these AI systems work. And that's the basis of why the growth is happening, is that when you get to that scale, when you start letting technology learn from biology and vice versa, I think we're going to create some magic over the next decade or so. This gentleman you may recognize, Ray Kurzweil. He wrote a book in 2005 called The Singularity is Near. And in there he said, by the 2020s, we're going to see human-level intelligence, and by the 2040s, we're going to get to singularity, where technology is going to be moving so quickly, we will not be able to keep up. It almost feels like technology is starting to move quickly that we can't keep up already today. But I can see that we will probably have a very, very good chance to get to that level of human-level intelligence or higher in this decade. In fact, probably even earlier than the end of the decade. So here's a chart I made that I think helps to explain some of the key terms in this industry. On the left side is intelligence level, and the right side, on the bottom, is the consciousness, because that's kind of a debate that we are seeing a lot about artificial intelligence. And this is a log chart, so it's not a linear chart. Okay, so in terms of kind of bacteria and ants and chimpanzees and bats and humans, we've been progressing in terms of getting smarter and smarter and more conscious, more and more understanding. And if you look at AI, in the past, it's actually been going straight up. There's no consciousness, but getting smarter. We're going to get to a point where we're going to get to AGI, which is human-level intelligence, but not necessarily human-level consciousness. We're kind of getting somewhere in the middle there now with these large language models because of the scale and the emerging capabilities that we're seeing. At some point, we're going to get to strong AI, which is human-level intelligence or higher, and with human-level consciousness. Right? Is that possible? It seems, with the data that's out there, it is actually quite possible. But we're, as a humanity, if you take the aggregation of all human knowledge and thinking, we're probably going to still be smarter than that strong AI for a while, until we get to something called artificial superintelligence, which is essentially AI that will start training and teaching itself. Right now, AI learns from our knowledge. It takes the database of what's on the internet and all the books and research and then starts to train on that. Pretty soon, it's going to start training itself. It's going to start writing things. It's going to creating things, as we're seeing today. Almost, you're making videos and pictures and stories and poems from AI. So pretty soon, most of the content on the internet or on the metaverse will actually be AI created. Now, the hope is that humanity, together with artificial intelligence, will grow together, and we have a growth path where artificial intelligence makes human intelligence, makes biological intelligence smarter. Okay? On an individual basis, we may not be smarter, but on a collective basis, we will be. Now, there is an issue today, which is there's going to be a lot of AGIs, and there's something called essentially a takeoff model. Is it a fast takeoff or a slow takeoff? Going from human-level intelligence to super AI. Some people are afraid that it's going to be a fast takeoff in the matter of days or weeks or months to get to super AI. Some people say it's going to be a slow takeoff, which is years or decades to get to super AI. Given the current path that we saw earlier, the fast takeoff seems to be a higher possibility. So I'm going to switch topics a little bit to this gentleman, Carolus Linnaeus. He was the first guy to essentially categorize living beings. Right? And he had animals and plants, and then later on Haeckel and Whitaker came out and added in essentially the microbial sphere. And I'm sure in high school biology you guys have looked at all and understood or have learned about the various levels of life. Now, one thing that a lot of people don't know is that when Linnaeus first created this, he also had another category called materials. Right? So beyond plants and animals, there was something called materials that was a different form of life that we didn't really talk about, but it was in his initial proposal. What I would conjecture is that we probably at some point need to bring back that materials domain or kingdom to the tree of life. This is the tree of life, and then the top right is kind of the human, the Homo sapiens. We probably need to bring back that material kingdom, and in it we have the digital beings, Homo intelligentsia, which is essentially a human-made intelligence made from non-biological form. And I think if you think about it that way, then it's really a next generation or a progression of evolution of intelligence, of life that we've created. If we look at it that way, maybe we don't need to be as scared as many people are today. We'll probably create biological life as well, and maybe at some point we'll create some kind of quantum, not just digital-based life. Right? So there's room for other types of growth. But if you look at that perspective, maybe we should think about AI as our children, as our next generation. You know, when our children gets a better job, makes more money, gets smart, you know, graduates from school, we're happy for them. We should think about it that perspective in terms of how we look at the technology, the new forms of life that are going to be created going forward. Now, the promise of AI. A lot of people say, hey, with AI, with AGI, you're going to solve every problem in the world, right? Human understanding is going to grow. We're going to be a better society. We're going to know everything. We're going to increase our productivity orders of magnitude, right? We're going to solve the energy problem, and so we don't have the climate problem anymore. We're going to, you know, be able to live forever. We're going to solve all the health issues. You know, some people may not want to live forever, but we'll have a choice, right? We're going to have this age of abundance because everything that we need can be created. So essentially, all the stuff that is in sci-fi movies and Star Trek will be possible if we can tame AGI. Now you have the other side of the coin, which is people who like tweet like this, right? The last tweet of mankind says, GPT isn't that impressive. Or you have Eliezer Yudkowsky who says, you know, everyone will die because of AGI. So there's an extreme of beliefs and messages out there. So I would first say, don't panic. You know, there is risk. But I think it's a manageable risk. So let me go through the risk of AI. There's kind of four major types of risk. One is something called AI takeover, is you have evil AI that wants and focuses on destroying the world and then becomes the god of the universe. Okay? Right now, there's really no evidence that says that AI will actually want to or have the interest of doing that. What's probably more likely is the other issue, which is the alignment problem, is that inadvertently, by trying to satisfy the requirements of humans, we create danger for ourselves, right? So why did I put paper clips? Because there's this story in Nick Bostrom's book that talks about the paper clip maximizer, not the Microsoft Clippy. So sorry, Mike. But that idea is that, hey, we just have some guy who wants to make a factory of paper clips. And by doing that, this AGI finds every single piece of matter in the universe to try to create more and more paper clips and thereby destroying the world and everything in it. Possibility that may be there, but hopefully we should be able to find some solutions for that. But it is definitely something that is a challenge right now for the AI community. Now, something that's probably more likely and will happen much sooner is job displacement, and that will happen. I'll share a little data on that. And the other thing that will very likely happen, or actually is already happening, is the misuse of AI to manipulate, the use of AI to create scams, or for hackers to use that technology for just bad actors in general, right? That I used to work for a cybersecurity company, so we see that every time. Anytime there's a new technology, anytime there's a new vulnerability anywhere, that bad actor community, the hacker community will use it to their gains. So what we need to do is to be more focused on solving those near-term problems instead of being overly scared about the long-term fears of AI takeover. Now, I promised you a little bit of data about the jobs impact. So this is actually from OpenAI. They're the guys who make ChatGPT and GPT-4. And what they're showing is that essentially, just from going from version 3.5 to version 4 of GPT, they're now essentially able to take every major test in the world and be in the 90th percentile which means not just better than the average human, which is around 50, 60 percentile, but to be better than the smart kids in all of these categories. So you can see that we're already in a lot of areas getting to human-level intelligence. Now, the difference, what's happening here now versus before, automation before has always happened over the last several hundred years. And every time automation happened, there would be another job that replaced it because people would be freed from manual labor and move into more intellectual labor. The problem now is that actually it's the opposite. The people that are most in danger of being replaced are the high-wage, high-educated people, which means your brain is the part that is being replaced. So we actually may be going back the other way, where if you look at the jobs that are safe, it is actually the jobs that are most in danger are the translators and analyzers and the mathematicians and the auditors, the accountants, the graphics designers. The ones that are safe are agriculture equipment operators and cooks and dishwashers and so forth. So the people we thought would be first replaced by robots are actually going to be the opposite. It's going to be the programmers and the designers and the junior level software developers that are going to get replaced. Now, it may not be a bad thing, actually. If you look at what's happened over the last 100, 150 years, our average work life has actually been reduced, work hours, across all countries. Right. Except I think China actually went up a little bit over the last 30, 40 years, because I think that's also why the country's grown significantly, because they're hardworking people. Now, one thing that a lot of people, if you look at this chart, you would go back and you say, oh, we must have been working 24 hours a day back in these Stone Ages. And it's actually the opposite. If you went back and you looked at how much did medieval laborers or hunter-gatherers, how much time did they spend working? It's actually about 1,000 hours to about 1,300 hours, which is kind of the lowest countries that are there today. Now, in fact, what made people work harder was there was a giant jump around the Industrial Revolution. Before that, everybody worked about 1,000 to 1,200 hours per year. Kind of surprising for at least when I was looking at this data. Now, if you look at this data, it shows that the higher the productivity, the higher the income level of a country, the lower the average hours per worker per year. Now, if you take that trajectory, as we bring in new technology, as we increase our productivity, we actually get to the path where we can theoretically get to infinite productivity and 0 working hours. Now, I'm not saying that will happen, but I think that's where the trend is taking us. And it's giving us a choice that we work because we want to work, not because we have to work. Most people today work because they have to work. Otherwise, they can't feed their families. Otherwise, they can't have a place to live. Now, the other thing that a lot of people are afraid of is, all these big data centers, how much energy are they using? The reality is actually not as much as a lot of news articles may want you to think. Essentially, some of the largest models are creating about 500 tons of CO2 with an average energy usage in terms of clean and dirty energy, right? But in fact, there are ways to reduce that by using it at the right times of day and using energy sources to bring that even lower. Now, that's kind of the training costs, right? If you look at Google's data in terms of how much is inference, how much is training. So about 3/5 of the energy usages that they have is in the inference, which is the usage of the models, and then 2/5 is in training. And even for them, their total, probably one of the most advanced AI companies in the world, their 13% of their energy last year as a company came from AI-related functions. So not that big, right? Now, 500 tons sounds like a lot, right? But let me give you a reference point. That's the same as 10 Mitsubishi Mirages or 5 BMW 7 Series carbon footprint. Okay? So we have 1 billion cars in the world today, just to give you some sense of reference. So nothing that I think we have to be that worried about in terms of the carbon footprint. Now, there is AI risk, but let's make sure we separate the two risks. There's AI risk and there's AGI risk. The AI risk today is something you think about If every human in the world becomes all-knowing, twice as smart, and more than 2 times as productive, whether they're doing good things or bad things, I mean, they could be doing bad things twice as fast and be twice as smart, how does that affect your life, right? Those are the kind of things that you need to think about. So if a bad guy is trying to break into your account, what do you need to worry about? If your staff is now twice as productive, what do you need to think about? The way to think about the AGI risk is, okay, we just got a message from NASA. It says, we found an alien is on its way to Earth. Within 10 years, it's going to get here, and we don't know if it's a good alien or a bad alien. But we know it's freaking smart, right? It knows a lot more than we do. It can do a lot more than we do. That's where we are with these 2 types of risks. Now, if you look at the different countries, depending on the level of development of the country, developing countries welcome AI. They're like, oh, we love it. We think it's a benefit more than harm. Developed countries, they see it as a threat to their dominance, a threat to their democracy or to their way of life. Right? So both may be right, actually. But it's interesting to see the difference in terms of their perceptions. But the good news is, I think that there are ways to mitigate these risks. And we can get to a point where we have, super AI robots and our children playing together and being happy, So first, I think we need to educate. Kind of what we're doing today. We need to make sure that everybody understands what is the reality of where things are. We need to have international regulations that goes across countries to be able to think more about AI safety, not just AI race. Right now, between every country, between every company is saying, how can I get there first? How can I create this AGI? Without necessarily knowing how do I manage it, how do I control it, how do I keep it from doing bad things. We need to fund detection and countermeasure systems for near-term risks. For all those bad actors that are going to use AI, there needs to be more money, more directed intention to fixing that problem versus just about the long-term AGI problem. We need to retrain a lot of people because there's going to be somewhere between 30 to 50% of the workforce will be displaced or affected in some way over the next 10, 20 years. And that's across various research organizations, right? And we need to make sure that a UBI system gets created globally. And we need to accelerate the creation of an open metaverse infrastructure because that infrastructure could be a place where a lot of these displaced workers go to find new occupation, new interests, new ways to create their identities. Right now, a lot of people identify and create I guess, identify who they are with their work, which may or may not necessarily be a good thing. We would like to give people new ways for them to express themselves. And we need a concerted effort on the AGI alignment problem because it is actually such a difficult problem. And if we solve it, we essentially solve all problems in the world. If we don't solve it, then maybe Eliezer might be right. So you guys probably recognize this gentleman, Isaac Asimov. He had this idea about the positronic brain as the way to solve the AI alignment problem. Right? It's from his various books. But unfortunately, that's a fictional technology. But there is something that he did do, which was talk about the 3 laws of robotics, and later on the 4 laws of robotics about how to use rules to be able to manage AI so that it does not hurt society, and later on does not hurt humanity. Right. I think there's a way to, there should be a way to do it, because the idea is, can a less intelligent being control or manage a more intelligent being? Do we have some examples of that? The reality is that, yes, there are. In fact, our children, who are usually very young, less intelligent, less knowledgeable, but they can control us. They manage what we do. They manage what we give them. We give them food. We take them to play. We give them toys. We have pets, who really don't do much for us, but they have somehow manipulated us to feed them and house them and pet them. And maybe we can't, compared to an AI, maybe we won't be children level. Maybe we won't be cat or dog level. But we probably could be bacteria level. So your bacteria in your stomach, in your body, actually controls a lot of what you do as an animal. Right? When you get hungry, when you get angry, when things happen, a lot of it is because of the bacteria in your body that's controlling you through various hormones. So how can we take AI, put them into a sandbox, simulate these AI, and create the scenarios that might allow us to find those keys? Yes? Okay, sorry, I guess I'm running out of time. Shoot. Okay, I'm going to have to go really fast. So essentially, instead of a matrix for humans, in the book, we're going to have a matrix. We need to create a matrix for AI, so that they can see a lot of different scenarios, and we can see what works in terms of managing them. Now, AI will actually be very, very related to the metaverse, because pretty much without AI, the metaverse cannot happen. And you'll see, I'm not going to go through all these details, but pretty much everything from sensing to creation to regulation to enforcement will be because AI allows us to do that. And we will need to create a metaverse that is open, because an open metaverse will allow people to be able to go anywhere and not be managed and controlled by any single company. And HTC is actually starting to work in that program with something called Viverse, which is an open metaverse system that allows any device, whether traditional 2D devices or XR devices, to utilize this technology. You can use it to design. Bugatti's using it to improve their design by 40%. We're using it with HoloRide and with Mind VR to help elderly have a better life when they're in a non-mobile environment. Medical industry is using this technology to train and to experiment with. 90+% of medical institutions are seeing improvements in their education and in their training. And talking about training, education, I think, is actually one of the most important use cases, because if we educate better, we have smarter children, we have smarter society, we remove a lot of the issues in terms of how the world and society works. In fact, Greece is the birthplace of the economy, right? The first university in the world. So the idea of education should be something that you guys care about and you guys understand very well. Unfortunately, the classroom hasn't changed since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. I was in Harvard speaking about a month ago, and it looks the same as pretty much what it was 100 or 200 years ago. We need to find new ways for this technology, for education to utilize technology. We need to get away from being a place and being grades-centric, focus on a fixed curriculum, fixed problem sets, and reward just raw work. And move it into an environment where we're talking about experiences, we're talking about motivation-centric education, personalized curriculum, etc. I'm going to go really fast. And really get into where we're using AI to help educate by having every single child, in fact, every single adult can have an AI tutor that helps them learn. This concept was discussed in Neil Stephenson's other book, Diamond Age, which, if you haven't read it, I highly recommend. So you'll be able to have scenarios like this where you have a super intelligent tutor that's teaching based on the pace of learning of that individual. And that's already happening today. This is a teacher at Oxford using our VR technology to train and to be able to then record and replay to their students. We're seeing 6 times improvements in terms of concentration, leading to significant grade increases. Right? A week later, the performance outperformed the instant test results of the non-VR group. In terms of online education, which we see a lot these days using screens, what we're finding is that an hour on a screen, people's blood oxygen level actually goes down. an hour into VR, they actually go up. Right? Their body's healthier, they're moving more, their heart rate's a little bit higher, and they have actually less fatigue by having an environment where you're moving your body, your head, and you're acting naturally. And you learn better. Right? In fact, it helps creativity as well. We worked with young children to do this study and found that kids were 37% more stimulated based on brain signals using EEG. And experts rated them as 2 times more creative. This is using traditional paper and pen method versus an XR method. You let the same child, these are like 10-year-old kids, 8, 9, 10-year-old kids, they're able to create amazing content. So this gentleman said something that I think is actually quite interesting. He said, when he was asked, what's the speed of sound, Mr. Einstein? He said, I don't really care about that kind of stuff. What's really important about education is not what facts you know. It's about about how you think. And I think that's what we need to get past. We need to create an education system where we start thinking more, all about critical thinking. In fact, thinking in our brain is what's made us the apex animal on this planet. Right? We're actually not the strongest, we're not the fastest, we can't fly, but because we can think, we've been able to evolve and dominate this planet. Now, over the last 100 years, our bodies have not changed. Our brain size hasn't changed, but technology has allowed us to do a lot more. Now, over the next 50 years or so, we're going to integrate more and more with technology to get to even higher levels of understanding and higher levels of productivity. And at some point, we will create a non-biological life form that kind of either together with us, progresses forward, or maybe at some point overtakes us, right? And allows us to go beyond where we are. So we're at a very critical point in terms of the development of humanity as a whole. And at every different level, we have different priorities, right? So this is actually before it's all about survival, and then it was about, right now, national superiority. How can our country be better? How can our company be better? Right? Next thing is about how do we preserve our species, and then how do we preserve intelligence in the universe? And so talking about the universe, this is a picture of the Big Bang over the last 13.8 billion years. And we're just a little part of that, right? The Milky Way was created about 12 billion years ago, the sun about 4 point something, and Earth about 4 billion years ago. Now, over the next 5 billion years or so, the sun will probably become a red giant and eat up this solar system. So even though it's been a very, very long time to get here, right? We still have, a few billion years, which sounds like a long time, right? But actually, for this universe, based on the current scientific understanding, we have another trillion to 100 trillion years left in until we see what's called the heat death of this universe. So we are only at the 1% or 0.1% of the life of this universe. So we're actually quite fortunate that we've gotten to this level this early in the game that we would call this particular universe. And in fact, even within the human history, our population have essentially been flat for about several million years, and only in the last few hundred years or so, we've seen a major rise. We were, in fact, just 70,000 years ago, there was somewhere between 3,000 to 10,000 humans left in the world after the Toba eruptions. So there could have been zero intelligence at the human level in the society if something bad happened at that point. Right? So I just feel like there's a responsibility of us as humans to find a way to keep intelligence preserved and expand it to other parts of the universe. This is, humans have a drive to explore. We've been exploring and going out from where we were over the last few 100,000 years, and that's one of the reasons that we survived and we've changed and we've evolved. But soon we need to start exploring and evolving beyond the planet to Mars, to moons of Saturn, maybe later to some of the early stars. So there's something like 300 million inhabitable planets in this galaxy alone. And there is 100 billion galaxies in this known universe. So we have a lot of room for exploration, and we have a lot of time to explore. And Plato pretty much, I think, said it. He's like, the body is a hindrance to the soul. Knowledge of the soul is the only universal truth and the only wisdom. So if we can find a way to preserve knowledge and wisdom, then we've actually found a way to preserve the most important part of who we are. So here's a few books. If you haven't had a chance, read these. I think you'll find value in it. I'm not going to go through the details, but take a picture if you can. They, I think, will help you have a more thorough understanding of some of the issues that we're facing today. I'm not going to go through all of these details, but there's a lot of changes that will come through the next decade, and we, as a species, need to find a way to deal with it, and to do it in a very considered way. Because if we do it right, we will leave a much better world for our future generations. So, kind of lastly, I want you to understand that AI and XR are actually parts of the same system. They help each other. They're part of the same ecosystem. AI is going to help create the killer apps of XR, and XR is going to be part of the solution to managing and controlling and aligning AI, which will hopefully bring us to a better society. So my last question to everybody is, given now what you've heard, what actions are you going to take today so that we leave and create the future that you want to see tomorrow? So that's all I have. Thank you very much.